4-part series about a greedy sister-in-law who only thinks the one thing you need in life is money. I'm 35, male, have been married to Maria, 26, female, for 2 years, and it's been amazing. Maria is from Brazil, and I have to admit that at the beginning there was some talk amongst my family and friends that she might just be after my money, as I am fairly well off. And she is like a lot younger than me, but that's not the case at all. We met whilst I was visiting her city with work, and we just hit it off right away. I'm a doctor and was in town to look at the possibility of providing assistance setting up a clinic to help poor people get access to a good, reliable medical system. I do a lot of charity work and have traveled the world, helping with clinics in poorer countries and areas where medical care is just harder to come by. Maria, lucky she's a nurse, and she was at the same meetings, and we got to know each other well over the 3 days as we worked together. She's beautiful, intelligent, which is a winning combination in my book. After the conference, we kept in touch by email, phone, and I invite her to come and visit me a few months later. We spent 2 weeks hanging out and found we had a lot of things that we were engaged in, and enjoyed the same things. It's like a match made in heaven. I just couldn't believe my luck, and within a year we were engaged. We got married 18 months after we met. My family, as I said, were very weary because of the age difference and preconceived ideas about girls looking to find rich men to take advantage of. But they soon fell in love with her as much as I did when they realized that she had no real intention of giving up her career once we were married and got a job at the same hospital as me. She even offered to sign a prenuptial agreement before the wedding. But I did not want that, as I trusted her and knew she would never do anything to harm me. Okay, well, let's fast forward a year. Her younger sister expressed an interest in coming to university near us to finish her degree, and also an interest in working in the medical profession. I'd not really spent much time with her sister, Gloria, but when we'd been together, she seemed like a nice person, although very different to Maria. I was surprised that she mentioned working in medicine, as she came across as someone who was more focused on her looks and spending time making videos for the internet. But I told myself that I was being as judgmental as my friends have been when I married Maria, and I should not judge Gloria by the interest that she has. That year, Gloria transferred to a good university in my home city to continue her education. She also changed her major, which would add an extra year to her education. But that was okay if she really wanted to qualify as a nurse. The fees for the university were expensive, and Gloria had talked to Maria about how hard it was to get funding and permission to study. Maria loves her family and is close to her sister, even though they are very different, and she told me about the struggles Gloria was having. I said that I would be more than willing to act as a sponsor for Gloria when she came to university, and as we live in a large home, Gloria could come and live with us. So she did not need to worry about finding somewhere to live. I offered to meet all the cost of Gloria's education, as I saw it as an investment in my sister-in-law's future, and once I married Maria, I saw Gloria as family. Gloria and her parents were extremely with the offer of immediately accepting it. There was also talk about paying me back for any fees over time. Maria's parents, they're not well off. They're in no way stuck in poverty, but they don't have a lot of savings or spare money for luxuries. Taking some of the pressure off them for Gloria's education made them very grateful. Maria and I helped Gloria fill in the documentation for the new course, and I wrote supporting documents showing that she would be living with me, and she would also be taking on some type of part-time work at my hospital to get more experience. She was accepted into the course, and she moved into the house with us. Looking back, I should have seen the signs that something was not right, as Gloria showed some strange behavior from the get-go. But I assumed it was just that she was trying to adjust to her new life in a new country, and I did not think too much about it. It never crossed my mind early on that she would turn out to be the person that she did. Well, life settled into a routine. Maria and I would go to work, and Gloria would go to university. In the evenings, we would hang out or go out for a meal. On the nights Maria and I were at work, we would ensure that Gloria had everything she needed, and life went on. It was a few months later when I started to notice strange things happening, but I still did not realize what was coming. However, it was these little things which in the end gave me the evidence I needed later on. Sorry, I'm rushing ahead, but there's so much to detail that my brain is going around in circles. I'll start with the little things that made me wonder if I was losing my mind. It started with things moving in the house. I would not be able to find letters or papers that I was sure I'd left on my desk, and both Gloria and Maria would have no idea where they were. Then, weirdly, a few days later, I would find them under my chair or down the back of my desk, where I was sure I'd looked. At first, I put it down to the fact that I was working long hours and was tired and careless. Soon, it was happening a lot, and I was wondering what on earth was happening, as we have a housekeeper. I began to suspect that she was moving things around, and that's what was concerning me. My housekeeper, Beth, was quite elderly and had been with me for years. She was almost like a family to me, and I didn't really need a housekeeper, but she refused to retire. I began to worry that her age was affecting her mind, and she was showing signs of dementia. As she swore blind, she had not moved anything. It did not help that Gloria was dropping little hints every now and again that she'd seen Beth doing strange things, which played into the idea of dementia. I guess thinking that Beth may be suffering from an age-related illness was easier to believe than my wife or her sister were the ones moving my things around and just not telling me. I also could not think why they would do this in the first place. For a smart man, I'm ridiculously naive at times, reassured that the things that disappeared for a few days or were no longer in the place I left them were just forgetfulness on the part of Beth, and life carried on. Looking back, poor Beth must have wondered what the heck was happening when I walked on eggshells around her, trying not to do anything that would confuse her more. She's a smart lady and has all her facilities. And in her mind, she probably thought that I was the one who was losing my mind. I can laugh now, but at the time it was an insane situation. As before life carried on, Gloria seemed to be loving her new life here and going to university. This is a whole other nightmare that I'll thrill you with in an update once I tell you the basics of my ideal life with my wife and sister. Life was good. 4 months after Gloria came to live with us, Maria asked if her family could come and stay for a mini vacation. I was more than happy to let them, as I believed, wrongfully, it turns out, that they were part of my family and I wanted to bond with them. Maria and I had some time off we could take, so we took 2 weeks off of work and her family came to visit. Things went well. We hung out, went out to explore the area, and just did things normal families do. Unfortunately, I was called into work during the second week to deal with an emergency. That was my specialty, and I missed most of the second week. Unfortunately, because I think that this is where the planning began. It led to me believing that Maria was also involved in things that happened, and I will spend the rest of my life apologizing for how I acted towards my wife. But more of that later. For now, I'll just say that those 2 weeks were my in-laws. I realized just how much money I really had, and began to move their plan forward to take on one of my properties for themselves, if they could, milk me for every penny in my bank. However, none of this was on my radar when, at the end of the holiday, I agreed that Maria's brother would also be able to come find work. He was older than his sister, and so I suggested we let him live in what would be a staff accommodation over the garage, until he found work and could pay his own way. I never intended to let him live totally rent-free, as I'm not a charity case, and I do not believe people should have everything just handed to them. Gloria lived with us, free, but that was only while she was at university, and I expected her to take on some work here at the hospital for experience. The family agreed to my terms, and Bruno, 28 male, moved into the apartment 6 weeks later. It was the beginning of the end of my relationship with Maria's family, and that decision almost cost me everything. So, you have to background. I know, it turned out longer to explain than I expected, so once I decided on the correct way to show you how bad things go, I'll update you on the steps that led to my almost losing my mind. What's up, guys? Mr. Reddito here. This story is absolutely wild. You will not believe what these next 3 updates entail. Guys, Sit back, relax, grab your favorite ice-cold beverage, and let's jump into update number 1. Things really got started to change when Bruno arrived. From the start, I was resentful and begrudged when I asked him whether he got any interviews for work. He was also obviously annoyed when I passed on details of jobs I've seen in the paper. Gloria also spent more and more time hanging out with Bruno and less time studying. Maria said that Bruno and Gloria have always been close, and so it wasn't surprising that they were spending time together. I decided that I should take a step back, as Maria mentioned that I was being hard on Bruno, who was trying to find his feet, and also that as an immigrant, people did not always want to employ him. They assumed he was here illegally. He had at least, told me, a work visa to be here. I'd offered to help him with things as I had with Gloria, but he assured me he was old enough to sort it out himself. He implied I was treating him like a child or an uneducated immigrant. Bruno spoke Spanish around his sisters even when I was around, but I just ignored it. I wonder how much things that happened where it led Bruno, and whether if I had not been willing to support him more, if things would not have gone as bad. Maybe I'm just trying to see the good in Gloria, as she seemed like such a good girl at the beginning. About 2 weeks after Bruno moved, my neighbor waved me to stop when I was coming back from work one day. Maria was still at work as she was on the evening shift, and my neighbor, we'll call him Stan. Stan's an older man and distrustful of anyone who does not have the same color skin as him, or looks poorer than our neighborhood. This is relevant to why it was quick to think he was just exaggerating. He told me that there had been loud music coming from my house whilst I was at work, and there had been some undesirable people coming and going. He said he suspected that my man was having drug parties whilst I was out. He assumed Bruno was staff at this point. I told Stan I would look into it, and I was sorry that he had been bothered by the music. At this point, it was quiet as a cemetery at the house. I drove in through the gates into the house. Gloria was not in the main house, so I guess she was with Bruno as she was not at university that day. I went and knocked at the door. Bruno's apartment. I would never walk in unannounced. I was slightly concerned at what I found. The apartment was a mess, and there was empty bottles of beer and wine strewn everywhere. Bruno's eyes were red, and he looked out of it. Gloria was sprawled on the sofa, and it was obvious that she was drunk. There was a fuge of smoke in the air and a herbal smell hanging around. Inside, I was furious as I did not want drug use in my property, but I also did not want to cause risks with Maria's family. I simply told Gloria she should go back to the house as Maria would be home within the hour, and I did not think Maria would be happy to see her sister like this. Her clothes were disheveled, and she looked awful. Bruno smirked and said something to his sister in Spanish, which I wish I had taken time to learn. And Gloria laughed. She laughed her way to the apartment in the main house. I looked over at Bruno and said there had been complaints from neighbors about music and visitors. Whilst I appreciated that this was his home, I would not allow it to be used as a party pad or a drug den. Bruno shrugged and said it was a one-off, and he had just been frustrated about his lack of work, and had invited some friends who also moved here to visit. He promised it would not happen again, and like a fool, I believed him. I believed him when he told me he got a job interview and would be hopefully starting a new job the following week. And I believed him a few days later, when he told me he found employment at a local car wash. It wasn't the job he was hoping for long-term, but he said it was a start. I told him it was the ideal job for getting experience, whilst looking for a better job later on, and he would have reference to help him. All in all, I was happy with the situation, but that would not last. We still had the occasional complaint from Stan about the music and noise, but as I never heard it myself, I put it down as Stan being an old man and not remembering what it was to be young again. The cracks started to show, though, with Gloria over the next month, and I realized she was not holding up to her end of the agreement. I received a letter from the university asking if I was continuing to sponsor Gloria, as her attendance had dropped and she was not turning in work. So, I spoke to Gloria, and she got upset and said that she was feeling too much pressure to be the perfect version of Maria, and she'd gotten so far behind that she was embarrassed to tell us. We immediately felt sorry for her, as Maria and I do work long hours and have not been able to support her with her studies recently. We agreed we would help her to catch up on work, find her a work placement at the hospital to help her get a feeling for nursing, and I would speak to the university. The university agreed to give her another chance, and things seemed better. I arranged for Gloria to have a day placement at the hospital working on ones who were playing me like a fiddle. Things would have never gotten as bad as they did. From this point, things went south quick. And they went bad quickly, so I'll break here so I'm not muddling in the real bad stuff with not so bad. I'll update you guys soon on the whole situation. Update number 2. Gloria and Bruno both played separate parts in a joint story, so we'll look at them both separately before we bring the results together. I think that'll be the easiest way to tell the nightmare story of my life over the 6 months. They almost cost me everything. We'll start with Bruno, because I believe he was the ringleader in this, although I think the plan was in motion from the very beginning. He came to live with us. I think it was planned from the time I married Maria, as the family saw me as a ticket to good times. Bruno was out of the house during the day, and I had no reason to suspect he wasn't doing anything other than working at the car wash, as he said. To be fair, he was working at a car wash. There was just not much car washing going on. The car wash was just a front for a much more profitable business, selling drugs to people and run by friends of Bruno's who had been using my above-garage apartment to crash and store things. Bruno had always planned to move here, but once Maria married me and Gloria also moved in, he realized he had a massive opportunity to look like a respectable man. Whilst also running with his friends, it offered a little bit of protection of sorts. I began to notice something was not feeling right when Bruno seemed to have a lot more cash than a person who worked a minimum wage job would have. He was wearing designer clothes, buying expensive alcohol and cigars, and finally, he arrived home in a classic Mustang car, which must have cost a small fortune. I asked Maria how he was affording all the stuff, and she said that Bruno had told her that there was a rich lady who was, quote, sweet on him, and was paying him to always wash her car and go out for meals with her. Bruno was anything but charming, but who was I to question the taste of a lonely old rich woman? To be honest, I don't think I ever believed it, but I wanted a quiet life. So we had Bruno living a secret life as a drug runner and using my house as a base. And then we had Gloria. Gloria, the sweetest young girl who wanted to come live with us so she could be a nurse and follow in her older sister's footsteps. Gloria who, it turned out, had been going through my paperwork like a detective, feeding back to her brother how well off I was, how many properties I owned, and most importantly for his plan, how many of those properties were empty. You see, Bruno was not just using my overhead garage apartment for storing, quote, merchandise. Oh no. He was also using my empty properties as places for his friends to crash and store more drugs. This was a huge operation. Gloria, it turned out, had never wanted to be a nurse. This sweet girl just wanted to get access to the medications we have in the hospital. The plan, I believe, was to find another source for more everyday drugs, and working in a hospital would just allow that. I do wonder how they thought they would get away with this part, as medications in hospitals are strictly monitored, and in reality this was riskier than the illegal side of their operation. Of course, as I was about to find out, they did not plan on it being such a long-term operation, and the plan was for someone else to take the fall. If you've not already guessed, that somebody was supposed to be me. I'm not sure what they thought would happen once I took the fall, but I suppose they hoped it would never get to that and they would happily continue as they were. It came out that Gloria was going to spend a while at the hospital, and then announces she was not cut out to be a nurse, and joined Bruno at the car wash or one of the other fronts. But they also wanted to use the opportunity to score some medication. They'd considered bringing Maria in, but had realized early on that Maria was not like them and really did love me. She would never betray me and such, and I wish I'd realized sooner as well, as I was not the greatest husband for a while. Everything exploded along just for about 6 months until there was a lockdown at the hospital, the drug room, and we were called in for questioning. Someone had noticed a discrepancy in the stock and the police had been called to investigate. This is where my life went to heck. Dear sweet Gloria told the police that she thought I had a drug problem, and she was worried about her sister living with me as I was a bad man. I was interviewed, as was Maria, and we both said we have no idea what Gloria was talking about. The police looked into my work record and could not find any suggestion that I was working under the influence of drugs. However, they asked if they could search my office and my house because I had nothing to hide. Well, I agreed. This turned out to be a mistake, as Gloria and Bruno had been hiding their stolen medicine in my house. Slowly, over the last 6 months, when the police searched my house, they found a mountain of hidden hospital medication and, just to add to my trouble, some not-so-legal drugs. They searched Bruno's apartment as well, but he'd moved everything following a tip from Gloria. So that's the story of how I got arrested. What's left to tell is how I got to where I am now. Able to tell you about this whole nightmare. It might be over, but the mental scars will be with me a lot longer. Update number 3. Following the search of my house, I was arrested alongside Maria, and she also worked at the hospital and lived in the same house. At this point, I was suspicious of everybody. I knew that something was going on, and as Gloria was the one who reported me, I knew she had something to do with it. From there, I thought that it was likely the whole dang family was in on it. I sat in an interview room stewing over my predicament, and by the time the police came to interview me, I've decided that Maria had only married me to get to my money and properties, and had worked with her family to get rid of me. If I went to jail, Maria would have the house and all my properties and money, and by default, her family would also have all of them as well. She would then be able to move her family into my home and live a happy life with her pesky husband rotting away in jail. The police left me sitting for what felt like hours until they came to question me, asking some questions over and over again. I repeated the same answers over and over and went around and around in circles. I told them that I had no idea who the drugs got into my house. I wasn't an addict and I was a great husband. They did not look convinced and they held me overnight, and in the morning I went to court to be arranged for trial. It was like a horrible nightmare. The prosecution tried to argue to keep me in jail until my trial, as I was a flight risk due to my wealth, but my lawyer was good, and I got to go home. Someone, aka Bruno, had let it slip to the press that a renowned doctor was stealing and selling drugs, and they were camped out at my house when I arrived home, blinding me with the camera flashes and shouting questions at me. When I finally got through the gate, I was stunned and a mess. Maria was waiting for me in the house in tears, but I wanted nothing to do with her or her family. I admit I lost my temper and yelled that she needed to leave me the heck alone. But I was scared and lost. I was facing losing my career and spending the rest of my life in prison, and I didn't know how to prove that I did not do what I was accused of. Maria tried to talk to me numerous times, but I always told her to get away, and it was her family and her who were doing this to me. Maria was hurt. I would think that as she was unaware of what was going on, but I did not know what. The investigation continued and my trial date was set. I was suspended from work and my medical license was frozen. I'd been convicted by the press, and Bruno and Gloria were having a ball, giving interviews to the police, and I think even Maria was beginning to doubt me. But in the end, it was Stan. Yeah, good old Stan the man, who turned things around. Stan, the old complaining man who could not cope with the young people playing music at night and had invested security cameras for his property which pointed at mine. Stan, who had an old man's distrust of immigrants in general and was sure he would be robbed and murdered in his bed one night by the immigrant living above my garage. It was Stan who provided the evidence that I had been framed. He'll never be short of his favorite whiskey and revolting smelling pipe tobacco as long as he lives. Stan heard what was happening and had gone to the police to tell them his story. His security cameras recorded onto a hard drive, and with the help of his son, he watched them before handing them whole thing right over to the police. I had no idea that he had done so until the police raided my home later one night, arresting Bruno. Well, Bruno did not go down without a fight, and I was stunned and I could not be so blind to his real character. Gloria had been arrested as she had not been seen with the known drug dealers on the tapes, but she was arrested at the same time for trying to jump onto the policeman's back as he arrested Bruno. Maria was just sat crying on the doorstep, and all of it was just a confusing night. It was only afterward that the police showed us the tapes. There was multiple times where Bruno was seen bringing boxes in and out of the house, meeting with known drug dealers in the view of the camera. And there were nights where when Maria and I were at work, a large number of people were seen arriving and not leaving for hours. I felt so bad I'd not believe Stan when he complained to me about the parties. The police told me some of the guests were well known to them. Bruno and Gloria were both charged as the hospital finally found evidence that the drugs disappeared when Gloria was on duty. And sometimes I had not even been in the building, as I appeared on none of the videos, and it was always when Maria and I were at work. We were both cleared of all wrongdoing. I have a lot of apologizing to do to my wife for ever thinking she would betray me. This just all happened very quickly. And time has passed. The trial finalized yesterday. I was not allowed to talk about the trial until it finished, but now I can, so the final update to this story will be the fates of the characters in this sordid tale. What's up, guys? Mr. Reddito here. There's one final update. I hope you guys enjoyed that roller coaster of a ride. Here is your final update. If you're not subscribed to the channel, go ahead and smash that subscribe button. So, what happened to all the people in this story? Let's get to it. I was cleared of all the wrongdoing except being a gullible idiot who did not realize he had a drug dealer living at his property. Maria was understandably mad at me that I doubted her and upset her family betrayed her. We're both going to therapy, together and separately, to help move forward with our marriage. We found out a week ago that we were going to be parents, and we were both ecstatic and confident in our love for each other. I've been reinstated at the hospital, and although I think people do look at me differently, things are going well. Maria and I have both discussed moving to one of my other properties to have a new fresh start, but that is for the future. Oh, Brutus! Well, Brutus was prosecuted to the full extent of the law. But he took a plea. They offered him a shorter sentence if he turned in some of his friends, which of course he did. He ratted like a singing canary. He'll spend the next 25 years in a federal penitentiary. I'm not sure how well he'll cope when it's that hard and he snitched on his friends, but to be honest, I don't really care. Gloria, though, I think she got off way too light. They have no hard proof on her that she was involved, as she was not on any of the CCTV. The district attorney struck a deal with her. The exchange for turning on her brother, they would settle for deportation. She understandably took the deal happily and was deported back to Brazil. I'm not sure how warm her welcome will be, as she basically gave evidence against her brother that put him away for over 2 decades. But again, I don't care. Maria was cutting all contact with her family. She's not sure how much her parents were involved in this, but they have given her a hard time for not standing up to her brother and sister. So in conclusion, within 1 year I was happily married, fooled by my criminal in-laws, arrested for drug dealing, cleared of all wrongdoing, and about to become a father. Oh boy, it's been a heck of a year. I mean, to be honest with you guys, I have no idea in my wildest imagination how Bruno and Gloria thought that they were going to get away with this. Hello, I don't know if anyone's familiar with how a hospital works, but they kinda lock up the drugs and keep the videos right above it with a security camera. I don't know what she was thinking, and it seems like Bruno, well, he was just a complete idiot. Let me know your thoughts on this story, guys. Drop it down below. Let me know, do you enjoy these 4-part updated stories, or do you want more stories in the video? Go ahead and drop your thoughts down below, guys. Once again, thank you for tuning in. If you're not subscribed to the channel, just understand one thing. That is the easiest way to support me, and it only takes a second. If you want more of Mr. Reddito videos, you can also check out my other 2 channels that are directly below in the description section. Once again, have a wonderful day, and remember one thing: it's cool to be kind.